Country music is yellow. Classical is white, except when I improvise it on a keytar. Then it's baby blue. Grunge and noise are green. Rock is salmon orange. Jazz and pop are turquoise and purple, respectively. As I grew older, my brain accentuated my case of photism. I began visibly seeing spots of yellow on the outskirts of my vision as I attended country concerts. My sight would filter itself baby blue as I improvised on a piano, while recepting a strong violet hue as I plucked on a bass. In essence, music became more than an auditory experience. I saw it. Now, while I realized this gift and recognized this gift I was given, I never really quite understood it. Why was my brain making a connection between music and color that it did? Was this dependent on the timbre or instrumentation used of a song, or was it more so dependent on rhythm? This curiosity, stemming from a desire to understand who and what I am, led me on a journey of sorts. A journey looking to understand the intrinsic purpose and meaning music holds in our society. I wanted to answer the question, what is music? Now, at first glance, this seems like a basic question. Music is, well, music. If we were to semantically define it, it'd be the composition of sounds looking to yield an emotive response and convey meaning. However, if we take that definition further, we can ask ourselves so many nuanced questions, such as how do we compose these musical components? In what ways do we interpret music and why? Why do we yield an emotive response when listening to music? Through these questions, we prove that music has so much depth, there's so much purpose and meaning intrinsically defined within music, and that's what I sought to explore. Musician and video game soundtrack composer Andrew Sega once famously stated that music is nothing but ratios and harmonic maths anyways. And while he wasn't completely wrong, my first interpretation of what we consider music was a very algorithmic one. I considered music a math. Looking back to that definition of music I previously suggested, music is an arrangement of given components. And well, to effectively arrange said constituents, musicians use what is known as music theory, which is just the study of compositional music. When I was studying music theory, I found that there was a very mathematical approach to how musicians notated it all. Music theory, in its most rudimentary form, is merely the study of patterns with an artistic flair. This prompted me to do some research into the relationship between music and abstract mathematics, and more specifically group theory, a strand of abstract algebra that looks at how groups are created and notated. To be able to understand and approach what group theory is, we need to develop an understanding of what a group is. And well, the easiest way of doing that would be to highlight a group we deal with every day of our lives. Time. Within a minute, there are 60 seconds. Time is composed of 60 integers from 0 to 59 that create a minute. Any integer larger than 60 starts a new minute with the same predisposed range. If we were to add two sets of minutes, say 48 and 16, we'd say a minute and 4 seconds have passed, and not 64 seconds. And in essence, that's all group theory really talks about. It's the study of sequential integers that are pertinent to a predisposed range. Now, bringing our focus back to music, let's talk about octaves. On a piano, or a keyboard, or any instrument really, there's a set of 12 notes that compose of an octave. Now, if we number these 12 notes from 0 to 11, we can prove that they are indeed a group and are pertinent to the group theory definition. Any note numbered larger than 12 would start a new minute, or a new octave in this case. This is pertinent for several reasons. For one, group theory tells us that every group has what is known as a generator element. A generator element can kind of be defined as the difference term in a group that yields every other term in a group. So for example, 6, in this case, wouldn't work as a generator element. If we successively added 6 to every note, we'd just be cycling between C and G flat. So 0 plus 6 is 6, plus 6 is 12. Right? However, 5 and 7, interestingly enough, do qualify as generator elements. If we add 7 sequences successively to every single term, this is the series we get, which, when translated on a keyboard, yields the following series. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with music theory, this series is actually known as the circle of fifth. It is arguably the most impactful Western compositional tool ever developed. Originally curated by Pythagoras, the circle boasts a plethora of different uses, such as transposing music, distinguishing scales, and understanding chords. Classics such as I Will Survive by Gloria Gaynor and Hello by Lionel Richie adamantly use the circle of fifth in their chord progression. However, really every single major pop song you've ever heard in the past 50 years has used the circle of fifth in some way, shape, or form. This is one of the many instances where we see that compositional music is rooted in mathematics. In a sense, music can be interpreted as, analyzed as, and understood as a math. And yet, having said that, confining music to a numbers game, doesn't feel quite right. While we create music using mathematical process, our intent, our purpose for creating music isn't so algorithmic. We look to create music with meaning, with passion, with purpose. This realization showed me that music isn't just a permutation of notes. Music has purpose, and that forced me to reevaluate the definition of music that I previously suggested, the composition of sounds looking to yield an emotive response. But this time, I placed emphasis on the second half, looking to yield an emotive response and create meaning. And that's where the relationship between music and language became apparent. Music, or all art for that matter, in its most primitive form, is the expression of a theme, an emotive state, just about anything really. The focal notion to understand here is that music is expressive, and as a result, we understand it and interpret it in our own ways. This is where the linguistic component comes in. Language is a medium of expression. It is a tool through which to convey ideas. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Calling music a literal language seems like so much of a stretch. Consider this. Can music really convey the sentiments of Harry Potter is overrated or I still drink chocolate milk? Not exactly. Music, as Adam Lee once said, a famous musician, music doesn't have the ability to convey semantic meaning. We can't concretely, tangibly infer what music is trying to say because music has no mean of dialect. Rather, music creates meaning through the relationship between notes. And here's a demonstration to prove that. Let's say I play a note, any note, let's take C. Individually, that note derives no meaning. We feel nothing from it. But the second I combine it with another note, say F sharp, instantly our mind gets to work and creates meaning. We create a sense of dissonant tug, a pull, a feeling. We can't describe it, but it's there, and we can't avoid it. And that's the beauty of music. It creates meaning through the relationship between notes. This was actually the demonstration American composer Leonard Bernstein used to prove this same argument. Speaking of Bernstein, he argued that if we were to consider music a language, it would have to be considered a completely metaphorical language. Metaphors, similarly to music, yield ambiguous, interpretable meaning. When Katy Perry said, "Baby, you're a firework," she didn't literally mean her babe was a bunch of flammable, dangerous fireworks. Rather, it's the relationship both articles share, the fact that they're both explosive, radiant, exciting, that derives the intended meaning. And that's the relationship between music and language that we see. Music, similarly to language, yields meaning through the relationship between notes. Individually, baby and firework share no connection. They have no meaning, and yet our mind derives meaning from them. In music, each individual note holds no meaning, holds no weight, and yet the relationship between them is how we derive meaning. So having explored music as a math, music as a language, what is music? Does its computational nature of composition define it as a math? Or does its linguistic intent limit it to a language? What about the whole sociocultural and religious impact music has had on society, acting as a generational tool for change for centuries? Well, Frankly, there isn't really a correct answer, and there never was meant to be. Music, well, it's music. There's no singular way to interpret it. In fact, if anything, music is so vast, it's so deep, there's so much purpose, there's so much intent that goes behind it, that limiting music to a single subject area would almost be naive. We should learn to appreciate music for all the properties it combines, for the mathematics that goes behind computing it, for the language that goes behind its purpose. We should learn to appreciate music as a singular entity. And I guess there's kind of an argument to be made there that there's a relationship between music and life. A lot of us here, we bog ourselves down within life and we consider our flaws, our single flaws, and we forget to consider our life as a whole. We forget to appreciate the beauty of living, the privilege we have to be here right now. By limiting ourselves to a singular factor, we disallow ourselves to appreciate life to the fullest. So I guess if there's one thing you should take away from this talk, is that appreciate music for what it is, music, and appreciate life in that same way. Thank you.